To help us all understand a little bit more about equestrian sport, I've got the head of eventing for Western Cape Equestrian on the show with me, Mike Kreef. Mike, great to have you on the show. Meneer, how are you?
Well, I'm good, JP. Thank you very much.
Mike, I'm not sure if I hit the nail on the head there or if I even came close to it. Equestrian's got so many disciplines, but of course in your platform, you're known as the maestro of eventing.
Well, we call eventing, sometimes we call it horse trials, but eventing is basically three of the English disciplines. And I say English disciplines as being the FEI disciplines as opposed to, for instance, tent pegging and west riding and the other disciplines that we have in your basket of equestrian sport. So eventing has three phases. The first one is dressage. The second phase is show jumping, and the third phase is the cross country. And the difference between the three is that dressage is to test whether the horses are schooled and supple and obedient. And for the layman, one could say it's like gymnastics or ballet. Each movement is marked out of 10 points. Show jumping is where the poles can fall. They're loose in a cup. So if a horse knocks them, the poles fall, and that's how the horses get penalized for knocking the poles down. And eventing is cross country over fixed obstacles, and it's a little bit like steeplechasing used to be in the old days, where people used to race from the one church steeple to the other. There's a set course that one has to do. It's measured and it's timed, and depending on the level that you ride at, the lowest level that we have in the country at the moment, you ride at about 24 kilometers an hour, and our top levels you would ride at about 28 to 29 kilometers an hour as an overall speed.
So, Mike, do the codes also operate separately? I mean, you mentioned dressage, you mentioned show jumping, and you mentioned not endurance, but
cross country.
Cross country. Because I'm just thinking back now that we did interview endurance. But those three codes, do they also operate separately and have their own competitions?
Dressage do and show jumping do, but cross country is part of the eventing discipline. So
Right.
cross country doesn't operate independently, but certainly you could have a pure dressage horse or pure dressage show and a pure show jumping show. They are separate disciplines, yes.
So, Mike, tell us a little bit, because I also found this fascinating, because I've had the privilege of having a conversation with you on another occasion, and I recall you telling me about where these disciplines started, and that it actually has quite a large history or deep set roots in wartime.
Yeah, JP, the interesting part about how eventing or three-phase competition started, it was started by the British naval office, the British cavalry officers, not naval officers, British cavalry officers, where in their spare time when they were locked down in camp, they would, as a sport, they would challenge one another, um, mainly to sort of show off who had the better trained horse. And that's where they took dressage, which, as I say, is a very disciplined discipline. Dressage is done in a confined arena with markers, and each of those movements need to be done between the markers. And as I said earlier, they mark individually and then a combined score. Then in normal three phase, we would have the cross country second as the second phase, and that's where you go galloping as fast as you can from one point to another, as I said, with fixed obstacles in between. Those would be fallen trees, banks, ditches, water crossings. And then the third phase traditionally is the last phase where, as I said earlier, the poles can fall. So the test there is really not necessarily to find a show jumping winner, but to find a horse that, after being allowed to gallop almost freely and as fast as he could, and then all of those three scores are added together. And in fact, in our sport, it's the person with the lowest number of penalties that wins.
Obviously, equestrian sports is a little bit different to some of the other sports because you have an animal with you. You have a horse. So it's maybe a little bit more complicated. How much training goes into becoming a successful eventing or show jumping or a cross-country athlete?
You know, I think it was Gary Player who once said, the more you practice, the better you get. And the same, I think, is for any sport. Um, I think particularly in eventing, where there is, or the cross-country phase of it, where there is an inherent amount of danger, the more you trust your horse and the more the horse trusts you, the better ride you're going to have. The horse should never feel that the rider is going to put him in jeopardy, and similarly, the rider should never feel that the horse is going to put him in jeopardy. So I always say to people when I'm talking to them about schooling, there's a Wi-Fi between the horse's mind and the rider's mind. That Wi-Fi you can't switch off. You cannot slow down. You just got to make sure that both of you are using it to the best of its ability.
Mike, competition-wise, of course, we know that it's been COVID and things have been a little bit difficult and disruptive, to say the least. Have you guys managed to get some events back on track?
Yes, we went through that long period with no competition at all. We've had a couple in Natal. We've had one just this last weekend in George, and then we're actually holding the adult South African Championships at the end of November in KZN. So we're not back on track as we were, because obviously we don't have spectators and we don't have sponsors and we don't have all the people that we need to make the sport work. But yes, we are getting back on track, let's say.
Tell us about the event that you held on the weekend in George. I'm assuming we had a lot of athletes from the Western Cape there.
We had 102 athletes in total, athletes and horses. And I must say, I love George. I've been going there for probably 40 years to their shows. And I love being there. And once again, I think they pulled off a fantastic show. Obviously, it was a lot harder for them this time because they had to try and keep people out, and there were no vendors, very few sponsors. But I think they did a sterling job. I think the way they handled their COVID protocols was excellent. And I must say, even though I am a bit biased, I must say they did an excellent job of the whole thing, and it was a great show had by all.
And how are we doing from an athlete point of view? Are we bringing back the medals for Western Cape?
Yeah, the Western Cape people did well, generally. But yeah, again, one only travels with a horse that's capable of putting up a good performance. And I know that we don't need to win every competition that we go to because it's progression through the grades. But one wouldn't travel with a horse that wasn't ready to go and do that. You'd rather have a few shows at home. So when the Western Province people go out to compete, they compete.
Mike, we'll leave it at that. I'm going to say thanks to you. Obviously, we're looking forward to following you guys and getting a lot of photographs and videos, and hopefully we beat this COVID thing and we see lots of equestrian action on the card soon.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much, and thanks for the time.
There we go, folks. Mike Greff, head of eventing at the Western Cape Equestrian Federation. And remember, you can, of course, if you want to sign up, join a club, just get involved. Go and visit their website, www.wcefed, for Western Cape Equestrian Federation. Sign up, get involved. Some fantastic stuff happening in the world of equestrian sports.